Serious, what terrifying confession has someone told you while intoxicated?
My uncle told me he was raped as a child by an older friend. Explains a lot of his problems.
Gay man dying of AIDS said I could charge my entire bar tab to his credit card cause he was going to die soon. Edit, it was me and a few friends watching football, so our tab was probably plus $200, but I was talking to him for a while before he said this. Think he was lonely and scared. So we just watched football with him for the rest of the afternoon. Made him feel welcome and normal at least for a while. Just wanted what the rest of us do, to not feel alone and that someone cares. I believe his name was Ron. Edit number 2. This was 2001.
My dad told me while he was drunk that the reason him and my mom divorced is because she slept with his best friend, who is now my stepdad, and they have my brother. I nearly fucking fainted as I spent the last 20 years being lied to as I had no idea.
Coworker told me he killed a dude. The other guy had a bad reputation for being a violent asshole, and made it pretty clear that only one of them would be leaving the room alive. My coworker decided that he would prefer to be the one who didn't die. He did turn himself in and spent some time in prison.
Ages back, I was helping a blackout drunk coworker to his apartment, etc. He was needing to be carried 1 second and sprinting across the parking lot the next. As we're getting close to his room, he starts breaking down. Why did I hit him? I shouldn't have run, etc. Turns out drunk Diego is pretty convinced he hit a kid with his car one day. Sober Diego has no idea what he was talking about.
My brother was drunk and he told me how he got sexually assaulted by our half-brother when he was 8. And that he knew that our half-brother assaulted me too when I was 5. I hadn't ever told my brother about my situation, so I was in shock.
A friend of mine likes to drink a lot, but he knows he has a limit because when he goes over it, he becomes very talkative. He also doesn't date at all, and for a long time we all wondered why. He's a good-looking guy, he's really nice, he's fun to be around when he isn't drinking, anyway, never wants to date. Well, one time he got absolutely shit-faced and I found out why. It turns out that when we was a kid, he saw his aunt murder his uncle in cold blood. Ever since, he's been terrified of being alone with a woman and feels like he could never truly be safe around them.
My mom told me she wished she aborted me when I was 8 or 9 or so. She's doing better now after a long struggle with alcoholism. Our relationship is much better, and when I told her this a few months ago she hugged me tightly, and keeps apologizing to this day. Thank you so much for the awards. And everyone who relates, I hope you will find peace and love wherever you may go.
My grandpa never talked about his Korean War service. He had severe PTSD though. Would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. Then one night he came home absolutely shit-faced, laid down on the couch, then told me that his entire unit had been wiped out before his eyes. He was the sole survivor and got caught behind enemy lines, but made it out. He was their sergeant and blamed himself. He eventually got into veterans therapy in his 60s though.
They didn't tell me this while they were drunk, but I think it fits here. I am a volunteer at a nursing home. When one of the female residents was close to death, she confided it in me this. One time her husband cheated on her with the neighbor's wife. When the neighbor's husband found out, he was very upset, and was going to physically hurt her husband. They worked out a deal where the neighbor's husband would not hurt her husband if he was able to return the favor. In essence, her husband agreed to let the neighbor have her in order to save himself a righteous beating. It gets worse, she later became pregnant and told her husband for the rest of his life that it was his, but she honestly believed it to be the neighbor's. Her whole life she was carrying this burden about her son and what her husband had done to her, both with the cheating on her, and with the trading her off like a cow. It was truly a heartbreaking conversation.
I drunkenly confessed to my aunt at Christmas about how unhappy I've been feeling for the last 2 years and that I've got a bit of a coke addiction. The phone call from my sister the next morning was awkward as hell to have. Didn't think this would blow up. Thanks for the advice and kind messages, smiley face. I'm currently 2 weeks cold turkey and today has been rough one. Reading these comments, and having people DM me advice or just generally asking if I'm okay has given me the motivation I've needed to keep at it.
My uncle said that my grandfather wasn't exactly a caring/loving father because of working in the coal mines. He said my pap was terrified every day because he didn't know if he was coming home or not cause he'd hear the mountains above him crack.
I had a colleague tell me 20 drinks and she was not only suicidal, but that she had unsuppressed HIV and was knowingly transmitting it to partners she was sleeping with and not telling them because she didn't care about people. I'm an HIV case manager, so this was absolutely horrific for me.
Playing truth or dare at a party with close friends, our lesbian friend of 8 years chooses truth, other friend asks her, jokingly, if she's ever sucked dick. Everyone's laughing, she isn't. She admits to being raped by her uncle for 4 years as a child. Friend who asked starts crying, he had no idea. None of us did.
Was chilling with an older dude with whom I recently started working as a butcher in a grocery store. A couple of beers down and he starts telling me he's been in prison for 17 years. Came out 2 years ago and it's his first ever job at 64 years old. I got curious and asked him what happened if it wasn't too private. Without hesitation, he simply answered, I cut him down with an axe, this piece of shit. And now he's a butcher. Dude must really like his job, I guess, LMAO.
One time, an old acquaintance, F49, and I, M32, were drinking late into the night. She drank much faster than me, and before long randomly and drunkenly confessed to me the following: when her aging and sick mother, whom she despised, and was a ton of unappreciated work to care for, was left in her care, she intentionally withheld certain medications and gave her too much of other ones, with the plan being to kill her off. It worked. She told her other siblings that the illness must have finally gotten to her, and she passed in her sleep. Since she was already old and sick, there was no autopsy. A minute later she snapped out of it and apologized profusely for telling me that, adding that I am the only person she has ever told. Edit, this is the most likes, comments, awards or anything I've ever received on Reddit on a comment or post. Thanks for all the interesting responses and awards.
We were talking about Al Franken and they said something along the lines of all guys fondle girls when they are sleeping. I used to touch my sister all the time. You could have heard a pin drop. We're no longer friends.
Some guy told me the proper technique to roofie a drink without a girl noticing. I told the bouncer who threw him out, but I'll never know if he was serious or just fucking with me.
I scolded a drunk girl because she was trying to shoot up in the bathroom of a strip club. At first, I was pissed because there was blood on the toilet seat. She started crying and said, "It's not my fault, my dad's been shooting me up since I was 10. It was freaking sad and I felt horrible for yelling at her. Edit, shoot up equals injecting drugs into her veins. I'm aware she could be lying, however, it could equally be true. In the strip club, you find a lot of fucked up women, with fucked up stories. Had it been anywhere else I wouldn't have believed her.
I once had a friend tell me he used to kill cats as a child, like brutally skin them alive and dissection. His parents found out and sent him to therapy his whole childhood. As far as I know, he never did anything bad after, but I still wonder to this day. He told me out of the blue when we were tripping balls on mushrooms. Said he never felt regret for it, but knew it was wrong. He said his curiosity was stronger than guilt. Never hung out with him again, and his comments sent me into I need to go home now kind LF trip.
That their uncle made them help bury a body.
An old coworker of mine told me about how him and his friends killed a guy in the 80s who raped one of their sisters. He wasn't even drunk. He said they pulled up to his trailer out in the desert, honked the horn, and when the guy came out, about 6 guys all opened fire on him. He said that way no one knew exactly who killed him.
My grandfather recalled his happy memories of visiting brothels in Algeria during the war. In front of my horrified grandmother, who he was already married to at the time and clearly had never heard of it. He also bragged about shooting a dozen people during that time, with a smile on his face. His side was the one invading. Fucked up shit.
I had a friend who told me that his girlfriend dumped him because they got into a huge fight when they were drunk, and she was convinced he threatened her with physical violence. He said he was saying things out of frustration like and all that, but he was sitting the whole time, and she was the one that was yelling and screaming. Weird, but okay. A few weeks later, I meet him up for drinks and he is absolutely plastered. I walk him back to his place with one of his friends. As we're walking, he starts crying and says that he fucked up, and that he is a terrible person. We asked him to elaborate, and he tells us that his ex left because he threw her into a mirror and then flipped a coffee table at her. She's okay, couple bruises, scrapes. Kept my distance after that.
Working with this guy, who's probably 15 years older than me. After some drinks, he tells me why he's a janitor. He's a smart dude, so I was kinda curious as well. He backed up out of his laneway, and a little girl came running across, and he kills her. Complete mistake. This had happened in the early 80s. Due to this, his record, he can't do really anything. Really sad.
A few nights ago, a guy who I knew had a thing for me pretty much admitted to stalking me while he was drunk. He told me he walks by my room and considers barging in. We live in student housing. He admitted to looking through my desk. I've never let him in my room, so this would mean he let himself in. And #X200B, he admitted to stealing a flower hair clip I wear. And even more creepy, it reappeared in my room the next day. Needless to say, I changed my locks. But yeah, that's pretty terrifying to me.
At a Christmas party, all was going well until a middle-aged couple started having an intoxicated blazing row. This domestic occurred a few minutes short of midnight. The wife involved was not a coworker, but her husband was. They were both very drunk. People intervened, with me escorting the husband into the cloakroom to cool off. Now I knew that this guy had a reputation as a cheating Tinder hustler and that he'd often brag about his extramarital conquests. I wasn't ready for him to confess that he had hepatitis and had tested HIV positive 6 months ago. But confess he did, sobbing that his wife was going to leave him, as if he was the victim. TLDR, drunk married sleazebag confessed to sexual relations with multiple Tinder dates knowing he had hepatitis and HIV.
I was sitting at home when a friend of mine came over shit-faced. She staggered in and sat down on the couch a few feet from me. She told me something completely fucked up. When I was 17, my stepdad was drunk and tried to have sex with me because I looked like his dead wife. He kept calling me Abigail and just wouldn't let go of me. He kept saying he missed her and that he loves her, but knew she'd never come back. He said I reminded him of her to the point he couldn't help himself. That's why I never talk about sex stuff with you guys. I lost my virginity out of pity, and it left me with so much mental and emotional damage. She started crying after that, but I had no idea what to do or say. I was stunned. Then it hit me how she doesn't talk about her stepdad when asked about her family. She said I'm the only one that knows about any of this.
An old friend I grew up with ended up messing around with the wrong crowd for a good few years until they all fell out. 4 of them wearing balaclavas went to his door and stabbed him multiple times. When they left, they forgot to shut the door, and someone out walking the dog found him. After I found out about it a few weeks later, I was out drinking with some mates, and a couple guys started talking utter rubbish about stuff until one of them said what him and his mates done to someone just weeks prior. Honesty shit myself when I put 2 and 2 together.
My brother confessed he was in love with and raping his stepdaughter. It wasn't rape because they loved each other. Yeah, no, you are a rapist. I tracked her down because she had run away at 16 and told her to tell the police that I would stand by her side. My brother is serving a 7-year prison sentence. It turns out he also raped his daughter's friend. This was fucking hard. My dad is schizophrenic and my brother raised me while my mom worked her ass off. I was pregnant when he finally went to court. My baby had IUGR and I had to be induced, and it triggered a terrible postpartum mental break. I hate his guts. I can't imagine how my niece is doing, as just being in proximity to this fucked up my life. Like my brain will never be the same.